The chamber was built to make visitors feel small. It worked. Admiral Marcus Cole stood at the center of a platform that floated above an endless darkness. Above him, arranged in rising tiers that disappeared into artificial clouds, sat the representatives of 800 alien species. Some had too many eyes. Others had none. A few existed as shifting clouds of gas contained in magnetic fields. All of them were looking at the 7 humans who had dared to enter the heart of galactic power. The sovereign assembly of the Galactic Dominion had ruled the known universe for 9 million years. They had conquered empires, erased civilizations, and shaped the destiny of every intelligent species within 10,000 light years. No one challenged them. No one questioned them. And no one, in all of recorded history, had ever refused their summons. Until today. High Arbiter Velthos descended from his throne on a pillar of golden light. He was ancient beyond human comprehension, a being of crystalline flesh and burning plasma that had personally overseen the subjugation of 300 worlds. His voice did not come from any mouth. It simply existed, filling the chamber like thunder. Species 7841. Designation: Human. Homeworld: Earth, Sol System. You have been brought before this assembly to answer for crimes against galactic law. Ambassador Diana Wells stepped forward. At 57 years old, she had faced presidents, dictators, and terrorists. None of them had prepared her for this moment. But she kept her voice steady. We acknowledge the assembly's summons. However, we request clarification on what crimes humanity has allegedly committed. A ripple of sound passed through the chamber. It might have been laughter. It might have been disgust. Ambassador Wells could not tell. Velthos raised one of his many limbs, and a holographic display materialized in the air. It showed Earth's orbital defense network. 17 massive platforms hung in space around the blue planet, each one bristling with electromagnetic accelerators capable of launching projectiles at nearly half the speed of light. You have constructed weapons of mass destruction, Velthos declared. Class 9 kinetic accelerators. Devices capable of shattering moons. This violates Statute 2447 of the Galactic Accord, which prohibits primitive species from developing military technology beyond their developmental threshold. Admiral Cole felt anger rise in his chest, but he kept his expression neutral. Primitive species. That was what they called humanity. A civilization that had split the atom, walked on its moon, and now reached for the stars. Primitive. Those weapons are purely defensive, Ambassador Wells replied. Earth has faced 3 incursions from hostile forces since achieving interstellar contact. We have the right to protect ourselves. You have the rights we grant you, Velthos said. Nothing more. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Admiral Cole understood what was happening. This was not a trial. This was a demonstration. The Dominion was showing the galaxy what happened to species that dared to build their own futures. He thought about his daughter, Emma, back on Earth. She was 12 years old, fascinated by the stars, dreaming of the day she might travel among them. What future would she have under the Dominion's rule? What dreams would they allow her to keep? The Assembly has reviewed your case, Velthos continued. The verdict is predetermined. Humanity will dismantle its orbital weapons. Humanity will submit to permanent military oversight. Humanity will accept Dominion governance or face the consequences. Admiral Cole's communicator vibrated against his wrist. 3 short pulses. The signal he had been waiting for. High Arbiter, he said, his voice cutting through the chamber's oppressive silence. Before you deliver your final judgment, there is something you should know. Velthos turned his burning gaze toward the Admiral. You do not speak unless spoken to, soldier. I am speaking anyway. Cole stepped forward. past the invisible barrier that separated defendants from judges. Guards moved to stop him, but he raised his hand. 23 minutes ago, your communication relays in sectors 17 through 894 went offline. 18 minutes ago, your enforcement fleet in the Perseus Arm lost contact with this station. The chamber fell silent. Truly silent. Even the ambient hum of the station's system seemed to fade. And 11 minutes ago, Cole continued, Earth activated its first teleportation gate. Velthus's crystalline form flickered. For a being who had lived 9 million years, uncertainty was an unfamiliar sensation. Teleportation technology is restricted. No species below Tier 3 classification has ever achieved dimensional folding. You are lying. Am I? Admiral Cole tapped his communicator, and a holographic display appeared beside him. It showed Earth, beautiful and blue, surrounded by a web of shimmering portals. Ships moved through them, vanishing from one point in space and appearing at another instantly. We built railguns because we needed something you could see, something that would make you feel threatened enough to summon us here. We needed to buy time. Time for what? Velthus demanded. Time. To finish what actually mattered. Ambassador. Wells watched the Arbiter's expression shift from contempt to something she had never expected to see on an alien face. Fear. You cannot threaten this assembly, Velthus said. But his voice had lost its thunder. We command fleets beyond counting. We have weapons that can sterilize worlds. We have ruled this galaxy since before your species crawled from the oceans of your insignificant planet. And yet, Admiral Cole replied, you have never faced an enemy that can be everywhere at once. He turned to face the assembled representatives of 800 species. Many of them had been conquered by the Dominion. Many had watched their worlds burn. Many had forgotten what freedom felt like. But as Cole looked at them, he saw something stirring in their alien eyes. Something dangerous. Hope. The Dominion has told you that order requires obedience, Cole said. They have told you that peace requires submission. They have told you that some species are meant to rule and others are meant to serve. He paused, letting his words echo through the chamber. Humanity rejects these lies. Velthus moved toward him, plasma burning bright. You will be silent. I will not. Cole stood his ground. Earth will not disarm. Earth will not submit. And if the Dominion sends its fleets against us, they will find that the galaxy has changed. His communicator pulsed again. This time, he smiled. High Arbiter, I suggest you check your sensors. Your enforcement fleet just arrived at the edge of our solar system. 300 warships, ready to crush a primitive species that dared to build weapons. Then your defiance ends today, Velthus said. Perhaps. But I think you should look more carefully. The chamber's main display shifted, showing the Sol system. The Dominion fleet hung at its edge, massive and terrible. But they were not alone. Surrounding them, emerging from 47 teleportation gates, was humanity's hidden armada. 200 ships that the Dominion had never detected, built in secret facilities across the asteroid belt, waiting for exactly this moment. We knew you would come, Admiral Cole said quietly. We have been preparing for 15 years. Every diplomatic mission, every trade negotiation, every moment of apparent cooperation was designed to make you underestimate us. And now, here we are. Velthus stared at the display, watching as human ships took positions around his fleet. This is an act of war. No, Admiral Cole replied. This is a declaration of independence. The war begins only if you choose it. The chamber erupted into chaos. Species that had been silent for millennia began to speak. Voices rose in argument, fear, and something that sounded almost like excitement. The order that had held the galaxy in chains for 9 million years was cracking. Ambassador Wells moved to stand beside Admiral Cole. "What happens now?" she whispered. Cole watched the displays, watching the standoff at Sol's Edge, watching the representatives of 800 species realize that everything had changed. "Now," he said, "we find out who we really are." And somewhere across the vast emptiness of space, Earth waited, its railguns powered and its teleportation gates humming with energy, ready for whatever came next. The silence at the edge of the Sol system was deafening. 300 Dominion warships hung motionless in the void, their weapons powered but unfired. Around them, like wolves circling prey, 200 human vessels held position. Neither side moved. Neither side blinked. The fate of Earth dangled on a thread of tension and fear. Aboard the SS Prometheus, Captain Lyra Oze watched the tactical display with eyes that had not blinked in minutes. She had commanded ships for 15 years, but nothing had prepared her for this. One wrong move, one nervous finger on a trigger, and the greatest battle in human history would begin. "Status report," she said, her voice calm despite her racing heart. "All systems green." "Captain," Lieutenant Thomas Webb replied from the weapons station. "Teleportation gates are stable. We can extract or reinforce within seconds. And them?" "The Dominion flagship is powering its main weapon. Some kind of plasma lance. If they fire, they could take out 3 of our ships before we could respond." Captain Osei nodded slowly. She had read the intelligence reports. The Dominion had ruled the galaxy through overwhelming force for 9 million years. They had never lost a war. They had never needed to negotiate. And they had certainly never faced an enemy that could appear behind them without warning. Across the void, aboard the Dominion flagship Eternal Rue, Judgment Fleet Commander Kethros studied the same tactical display with growing unease. He was a veteran of 40 campaigns, a warrior who had personally overseen the subjugation of 17 species. But the readings in front of him made no sense. How did they hide an entire fleet? He demanded. His second officer, a scaled creature named Tessana, shook her head. "Unknown, Commander. Our long-range sensors detected no construction activity in their system. No shipyards. No resource extraction. These ships simply did not exist until they emerged from those portals." Kethros felt something he had not experienced in centuries. Doubt. The Dominion's power rested on the certainty that no species could challenge them. But if humanity had developed teleportation technology, if they had built a fleet in complete secrecy, if they had manipulated the Dominion into this confrontation, then everything the galaxy believed about them was wrong. "Open a channel to Earth," he ordered. "I want to speak with their military commander." Moments later, Admiral Marcus Cole's face appeared on the view screen. He looked tired but determined, a man who understood the weight of the moment. "Fleet Commander," Cole said, "I assume you have noticed our ships. I have noticed that you have committed an act of aggression against the Galactic Dominion. The penalty for this is extinction. And I have noticed that you are surrounded." Cole leaned forward. "Let me be clear about something. Humanity does not want war. We did not build these weapons because we dreamed of conquest. We built them because you gave us no choice." Kethros felt his scales tighten with anger. "You had choices. You could have submitted. You could have accepted your place in the Galactic Order. Instead, you chose defiance. We chose survival." Cole's voice hardened. 15 years ago, your inspectors came to Earth. They claimed it was routine, a survey of our military capabilities. But I was there, Commander. I watched them execute 37 of our scientists because they refused to hand over research data. I watched them destroy our first space station because it exceeded your arbitrary size limits. I held my son in my arms as he died from wounds inflicted by Dominion soldiers. The bridge fell silent. Even Tasana stopped moving. So yes, Cole continued, we built weapons. We built them in secret because we knew what would happen if you discovered them. We developed teleportation because we needed something that would make you hesitate. Something that would make you realize that humanity is not another species to be crushed and forgotten. Kethros stared at the human commander, searching for weakness, for fear, and found none. This was not the behavior of a primitive species. This was the behavior of predators who had learned to wear the masks of prey. You cannot win this war, Kethros said finally. Even with your new technology, the Dominion commands 1,000,000 ships. We have weapons that can break planets. Perhaps, Cole replied. But can you use them if you cannot find us? Can you destroy what you cannot catch? The implication hung between them. Humanity's teleportation gates did not just move ships. They moved everything, cities, populations. If the Dominion attacked Earth, there might be nothing there to destroy. Before Kethros could respond, alarm screamed across the bridge. Commander, Tasana shouted. One of our escort vessels has been destroyed. Kethros spun toward the display. A Dominion cruiser drifted in space, its engine core ripped apart from the inside. No human ship had moved. No weapon had been fired. But the cruiser was dead. What happened? Analyzing now. Commander, they teleported something directly into the ship's reactor. A projectile. A simple metal slug. The explosion was internal. Horror crept through Kethros's ancient mind. He understood now. The humans did not need to fire their weapons. They did not need to engage in traditional combat. They could simply appear inside a ship and destroy it from within. All vessels, emergency withdrawal. He ordered, fall back to the relay point. But even as the Dominion fleet began to move, Captain Ose watched from the Prometheus's bridge with grim satisfaction. The first blow had been struck, not by humans, but by a single automated system that Admiral Cole had activated remotely. A demonstration of what teleportation truly meant. They are retreating, Lieutenant Webb reported. For now, Ose replied. But they will be back. And next time, they will bring everything. On Earth, Ambassador Diana Wells watched the battle unfold from the command center buried beneath Geneva. Around her, generals and politicians argued about next steps, but she felt only exhaustion. They had bought time. They had proven that humanity could fight. But she knew this was only the beginning. Dr. Isaac Palmer approached her, his face pale with something other than fear. He was 80 years old, the physicist who had cracked the equations that made teleportation possible. He was also dying, his body ravaged by radiation from decades of dangerous experiments. Ambassador, he said quietly, there is something you need to know. Something I should have told you years ago. Wells turned to face him. What is it? The teleportation equations. I did not discover them. I found them. Palmer's hands trembled as he spoke. 20 years ago, an expedition to Mars uncovered an ancient structure buried beneath the northern ice cap. Inside were inscriptions, mathematical formulas carved into stone that was millions of years old. Someone left them there for us to find. Wells felt her blood run cold. What are you saying? I am saying that humanity was not the first species to develop this technology. Someone else built it long before us. Someone who wanted us to find it. Palmer looked toward the displays, showing Earth's orbital defenses. The Dominion has ruled this galaxy for 9 million years. But the galaxy is much older than that. And I believe we have just announced to whoever left those equations that their message was received. Before Wells could respond, every sensor in the command center began screaming at once. Energy signatures were appearing across the solar system, patterns that matched no known species, no known technology. Something was emerging from the same dimensional space that humanity's teleportation gates accessed. Something ancient. Something vast. Something that had been waiting. "My God," Lieutenant Webb whispered from his station aboard the Prometheus. "Captain, are you seeing this?" Asay stared at her display, watching shapes resolve from impossible geometries. They were not ships in any traditional sense. They were structures, networks, pathways that seemed to fold space itself. "What is it?" She breathed Dot, and then, for the first time in human history, something spoke directly into the minds of every person on Earth. It was not a voice, not exactly. It was a feeling, an understanding, a connection that bypassed all language and touched something primal. "Dot, we have waited so long," the presence said. "We have waited for someone brave enough to challenge the silence. Welcome, children of Earth. Welcome to the truth." The war with the Dominion had been humanity's greatest fear. But now, as ancient powers stirred and forgotten histories awakened, Admiral Cole realized that the real battle had not yet begun. It was just beginning. The presence filled Captain Lyra Osay's mind like water filling a vessel. It did not speak in words, but in images, memories, and emotions that felt both alien and strangely familiar. She saw galaxies being born and dying. She saw civilizations rising from dust and falling to ash. She saw a network of light spanning the universe, connecting every point in space to every other point. And she saw the moment that network went dark. "Captain?" Lieutenant Webb's voice seemed to come from very far away. "Captain, are you all right?" Asay blinked, returning to the bridge of the Prometheus. Her crew stared at her with wide eyes, and she realized that she had been standing motionless for nearly a minute, tears streaming down her face. "I am fine," she said, though the word felt inadequate. Did everyone experience that? The whole system, Captain. Every human. Every ship. Even the stations. Webb checked his displays with trembling hands. "We are receiving reports from Earth. People collapsed in the streets. Emergency services are overwhelmed." But Osay was not listening. She was staring at the shapes that had emerged from dimensional space, the structures that defied geometry and physics. They were not attacking. They were waiting. And somehow, she understood why they were waiting for humanity to understand. On Earth, Dr. Isaac Palmer sat in his wheelchair in the Geneva Command Center, his ancient body trembling not from disease, but from revelation. The presence had spoken to him more clearly than to anyone else. Perhaps because he had spent 50 years studying the equations it had left behind. "It called itself the Weaver," he explained to Ambassador Wells and Admiral Cole, his voice barely a whisper. "Not one being, but many. A collective consciousness created by a species that existed before the Dominion, before almost anything we know. They called themselves the Architects. What happened to them?" Wells asked. "They were destroyed." Palmer's eyes grew distant. The Dominion's founders rose to power 11 million years ago by waging war against the Architects. They built a weapon capable of ripping consciousness from physical form, trapping it in dimensional space. The Architects did not die. They were imprisoned. Admiral Cole felt a chill run down his spine. And now they are free? No, they are still trapped. But when humanity activated its first teleportation gate, it created a crack in their prison. For the first time in 11 million years, they can reach out. They can communicate. Palmer looked at the displays showing the Weaver's structures floating in space. They have been waiting for someone to find their message. They have been waiting for someone brave enough to challenge the Dominion. Why us? Wells demanded. Why humanity? Because they planted seeds. Palmer pulled up a holographic display showing human DNA. Millions of years ago, before the Dominion rose to power, The architects seeded thousands of worlds with genetic material designed to one day produce species capable of understanding their technology. Most of those seeds failed. Some evolved but never achieved space travel. Others were discovered and destroyed by the Dominion. But humanity survived, Cole said slowly. Humanity was overlooked. Palmer smiled weakly. A small planet orbiting an unremarkable star in a distant arm of the galaxy. By the time the Dominion noticed us, we had already found the equations. We had already begun building. The implications crashed over Wells like a wave. Humanity was not just fighting for independence. They were inheritors of something ancient, something powerful, something that could change the balance of the entire galaxy. What does the Weaver want from us? She asked. Palmer's expression grew serious. They want to be free. They want the weapon that imprisoned them to be destroyed. And they are willing to help humanity if we help them. Before anyone could respond, alarms began wailing throughout the command center. General Thomas Blake rushed to a console, his face paling as he read the incoming data. Ambassador, Admiral, we have a problem. The Dominion has activated something called Protocol Silence. High Arbiter Velphus has declared humanity a Class 1 existential threat. What does that mean? Cole demanded. It means they are deploying the silencing. Blake looked up, and for the first time since the crisis began, there was fear in his eyes. It is the same weapon they used against the architects. A beam of concentrated dimensional energy that can erase everything within 3 light hours of its target. They are going to destroy our entire solar system. The command center fell silent. 3 light hours. That was beyond Jupiter, beyond Saturn. Everything humanity had ever built, every person who had ever lived, every dream they had ever dreamed would simply cease to exist. How long? Wells asked. The weapon requires 72 hours to charge. After that, there will be nothing we can do to stop it. Captain Osei received the same information aboard the Prometheus. Her crew looked at her with expressions ranging from terror to despair. They had fought so hard, come so far, only to face annihilation. But the Weaver stirred in her mind, and with it came a feeling she did not expect. Calm. There is another way, the Presence communicated. Your gates access the same dimensional space where we are trapped. You can move not just ships, but worlds. Move worlds? Ozzy whispered aloud. Your sun. Your planets. Everything you call home. You can take it all beyond their reach. Lieutenant Webb stared at his captain. What is it saying? Asai turned to face him, and for the first time since the crisis began, hope sparked in her eyes. Contact Admiral Cole. Tell him I know how to save Earth. The plan was insane. It was impossible. It required connecting every teleportation gate humanity possessed and creating a single massive portal capable of moving an entire solar system into dimensional space. No species had ever attempted anything like it. No one even knew if it could work. But they had 72 hours. And they had no other choice. Across Earth, humanity mobilized in ways never before seen. Scientists abandoned their laboratories to work on gate modifications. Engineers redesigned power systems on the fly. Ordinary citizens helped however they could. Knowing that failure meant extinction, Dr. Palmer, despite his failing health, worked alongside Captain Osei's team to integrate the Weaver's knowledge with human technology. The ancient consciousness guided them through equations that had taken the architects millennia to develop, compressing centuries of progress into hours. Will this actually work? Ozzy asked during a brief rest period. Palmer looked at her with eyes that had seen too much and understood too little. The Weaver believes it will. But there is something else. Something I did not tell Ambassador Wells. What? If we succeed, we will not just be saving ourselves. We will be creating a permanent connection to the dimensional space where the architects are imprisoned. Earth will become a bridge between our reality and theirs. Palmer paused. We will not just be hiding from the Dominion. We will be inheriting the architect's legacy. Usay felt the weight of his words settle over her. Humanity had built railguns to defend themselves. They had developed teleportation to survive. Now they were about to become something entirely new, something that had not existed in 11 million years. A species with access to a network that spanned the universe. The countdown continued. The Dominion's weapon charged. And on Earth, humanity prepared for the greatest gamble in its history, 40-8 hours. That was how long they had to save everything they had ever known. Admiral Cole stood on the observation deck of the orbital command station, watching Earth turn slowly below him. His daughter Emma had sent him a message that morning, telling him she was proud of him, telling him she believed in humanity. He hoped she was right. All stations report ready. Wells's voice came through his communicator. Gate network is synchronized. Power levels are stable. We are waiting for your order. Cole looked at the stars, at the galaxy that had tried to crush humanity beneath its heel, and made his decision. Activate the gates, he said. Move Earth. And across the solar system. 47 teleportation portals flared to life, expanding beyond any size ever attempted, connecting into a single doorway large enough to swallow a world. The Dominion's weapon fired. A beam of pure annihilation streaked across space, aimed at the heart of the Sol system. But when it arrived, there was nothing there. The sun, the planets, the asteroids, the stations. Everything was gone. Earth had vanished. And somewhere, in a space between spaces, humanity opened its eyes to find itself in a new reality entirely. High Arbiter Velthos stared at the empty space where the Sol system had been, and for the first time in 9 million years, he felt something close to madness creeping into his ancient mind. Gone, he whispered. How can an entire star system simply be gone? The Sovereign Assembly Chamber had descended into chaos. Representatives of 800 species shouted questions, demanded explanations, and whispered conspiracies to each other. The Dominion's power had always rested on the belief that they were unstoppable, that no force in the galaxy could challenge them. But humanity had not just challenged them. Humanity had escaped. Fleet Commander Kethros appeared on the main display, his scales pale with shock. High Arbiter, we have conducted extensive surveys. There is no debris, no residual energy, no trace of destruction. Earth and its system were not destroyed. They were moved. Moved where? Velthos demanded. Unknown. Our sensors cannot detect them anywhere in normal space. It is as if they simply stepped outside reality. Velthos felt the weight of 1,000 watching eyes. Species that had been conquered, subjugated, and silenced for millions of years were looking at him differently now. They were looking at him the way prey looks at a predator that has just stumbled. In the pocket dimension, Earth floated in impossible beauty. The sky above was not blue, but filled with shifting patterns of light, networks of energy that stretched beyond comprehension. The sun still burned, the planets still orbited, but everything existed within a space that human science could barely describe. Captain Lyra Osei stood on a hill overlooking the city of Geneva, watching people emerge from shelters with expressions of wonder and fear. They had survived. Against all odds, against the greatest power in the galaxy, humanity had survived. The Weaver's presence touched her mind gently. You did well, child of Earth. You are the first species to successfully enter this space since the architects were imprisoned. What happens now? Osei asked aloud. Now you learn. Now you grow. And when you are ready, now you return. Admiral Marcus Cole called an emergency meeting in the Geneva Command Center. The room was filled with military leaders, scientists, and politicians, all of them struggling to understand what had happened to their world. "Status report," Cole demanded. General Blake stepped forward. "All major population centers survived the transition intact. We have some isolated incidents of panic and confusion, but overall, casualties are minimal. The bigger question is what exactly we have become." Dr. Palmer, looking weaker by the hour, spoke from his wheelchair. "We have become connected to the Architect's network. This dimension is not empty. It is infrastructure. Pathways that once allowed instant travel between any 2 points in the universe. Can we use them?" Ambassador Wells asked. "With time and study, yes. The Weaver is teaching us. But there is something else." Palmer pulled up a holographic display showing the galaxy as seen from outside normal space. "We can see everything from here. Every star, every planet, every ship. The Dominion thinks we are hiding. In truth, we have gained the greatest advantage imaginable." Cole leaned forward. "Explain. We can appear anywhere. We can see their fleet movements, their communicate ions, their secret installations. We can strike and vanish before they know what happened. And most importantly, we can finally deliver something we could never risk before." "What is that?" Palmer smiled weakly. "Hope. Across the galaxy, news of Earth's disappearance spread like wildfire. The Dominion claimed victory, announcing that the human threat had been eliminated. But whispers traveled faster than propaganda. Species that had been subjugated for millions of years heard different stories. They heard that humanity had not been destroyed. They heard that humanity had escaped using technology the Dominion could not counter. They heard that somewhere, somehow, the humans were still fighting. On a frozen world at the edge of Dominion space, a resistance coordinator named Valara gathered her people in secret. Her species, the Terethi, had been conquered 3 million years ago. They had lost everything, their freedom, their culture, their hope. But as she listened to the intercepted transmissions about humanity, something long dormant stirred in her chest. They defied the Dominion and survived, she told her followers. If they can do it, perhaps we can too. Similar scenes played out on hundreds of worlds. Species that had forgotten what rebellion meant began to remember. The galaxy was not changing yet, but it was beginning to tremble. Captain O.C. spent weeks learning to navigate the dimensional space with the Weaver's guidance. She discovered that the network was vast beyond imagination, connecting not just the Milky Way, but thousands of other galaxies. The architects had been building something incredible, a framework for universal civilization, before the Dominion's founders destroyed them. "Why did they attack you?" she asked the Weaver during one of their sessions. "Fear," the collective consciousness replied. The architects believed that all intelligent species deserved access to the stars. They shared their technology freely, lifted primitive worlds into the galactic community, threatened the power structures that kept the strong dominant over the weak. The founders of what became the Dominion could not allow that vision to succeed, so they built a weapon to destroy you, to trap us. We cannot die, child. We exist as patterns of thought and energy, but we cannot act. We cannot touch the physical world. We can only watch and wait and hope that someday someone would hear our call." Asay felt tears forming in her eyes. 11 million years. An entire civilization had been waiting for 11 million years, hoping that someone would come. "We will free you," she said. "I do not know how yet, but we will find a way." The Weaver's presence warmed with something like gratitude. "First, you must survive. The Dominion will not stop hunting you. And they have weapons we have not yet told you about." Back in the Geneva Command Center, Admiral Cole received a message that changed everything. Lieutenant Webb, now serving as the fleet's communications officer, decoded an intercepted Dominion transmission that made his blood run cold. "Admiral, you need to see this." The transmission was from High Arbiter Velthos, to all Dominion fleet commanders. It detailed a new strategy for dealing with the human threat. Since Earth could not be found, they would make humanity reveal itself by targeting other species. They are going to start executing populated worlds, Webb explained, his voice tight with horror. 1 planet per day until we surrender or reveal our location. Starting with a Terathy colony of 200 million people. The room fell silent. Cole looked at the faces around him and saw the same terrible understanding reflected in every eye. They had escaped the Dominion's wrath, but others would pay the price for their defiance. "We cannot allow this," Ambassador Wells said. "We cannot hide while innocent people die because of us. If we reveal ourselves, they will destroy us," General Blake argued. "We are not ready for a full-scale war." "Then we need to become ready," Cole said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. "We have access to a network that lets us appear anywhere in the galaxy. We have technology the Dominion cannot match. We have something they have never faced before." "What do we have?" Palmer asked. Cole stood, his expression hardening into something dangerous. "We have the ability to fight back. Not for conquest, not for revenge, but for everyone the Dominion has ever hurt. Every species they have crushed. Every world they have silenced." He walked to the main display and activated a galaxy-wide map. "Contact Velara and the Terathy resistance. Contact every subjugated species willing to fight. Tell them that Earth still lives. Tell them the network is rising. Tell them that for the first time in 11 million years, there is a chance to break free." Ambassador Wells stepped forward. "Are you sure about this? Once we start, there is no going back." Cole thought about his daughter, about the world he wanted her to inherit, about the countless billions across the galaxy living under the Dominion's heel. "There was never any going back," he said. "We built railguns because we refused to kneel. We developed teleportation because we refused to die. Now we fight because we refuse to let others suffer for our survival." He turned to face his people, his voice rising with conviction. "Send the message. To every world, every species, every being who has ever dreamed of freedom. Tell them the war has begun. And tell them that this time we are going to win." The message went out across the galaxy, traveling through the Weaver's network, appearing on screens and in minds on 1,000 different worlds. It was simple, just 4 words that carried the weight of 11 million years of silenced Earth lives. "Rise now," and across the galaxy, in secret places and hidden strongholds, beings of every species imaginable heard the call and began to answer. The rebellion had begun. The galaxy burned with revolution. On 100 worlds, species that had been silent for millions of years rose against their oppressors. Dominion installations fell. Supply lines collapsed. And at the center of it all, emerging from dimensional gates like ghosts made solid, human ships struck and vanished before anyone could respond. 6 months had passed since Earth sent its message. 6 months of chaos, of blood, of hope reborn from ancient ashes. The Dominion still controlled most of the galaxy, but their grip was weakening. For the first time in 11 million years, their power was not absolute. Captain Lyra Odes stood on the bridge of the Prometheus, watching the tactical display with tired but determined eyes. Around her, a fleet of 300 vessels waited for orders. They were not all human. Ships from the Terathy resistance, the Lumineth survivors, and a dozen other species who had answered humanity's call flew alongside them. "Final status report," she ordered. Lieutenant Webb looked up from his station. "All units in position. The Dominion Central Station is directly ahead. They have approximately 500 warships defending it, along with orbital weapon platforms and shield generators. And the special package? Ready and waiting. Dr. Palmer's modifications to the dimensional anchor are complete. If we can get it to the station's core, it will do the rest. Usay nodded slowly. The plan was dangerous, perhaps the most dangerous operation humanity had ever attempted. They were going to strike at the heart of the Galactic Dominion, the station where High Arbiter Velthos commanded his dying empire, and they were going to end this war once and for all. On Earth, hidden in its pocket of dimensional space, Admiral Marcus Cole addressed the combined forces of the rebellion through the Weaver's network. His image appeared on screens across 1,000 worlds, speaking to billions of beings who had joined humanity's cause. Today, we strike at the source of 11 million years of tyranny. Today, we show the galaxy that no power, no matter how ancient or terrible, can extinguish the light of freedom. Some of us will not survive this day, but those who fall will be remembered by every generation that comes after, in every free world that rises from the ashes of the Dominion's rule. He paused, letting his words settle into the hearts of all who heard them. We built railguns because we refused to kneel. We developed teleportation because we refused to disappear. And today, we fight because we refuse to let fear control our future. His voice rose with conviction. For Earth, for every species that has suffered, for the architects who gave us this chance. Today, the Dominion falls. The fleet surged forward. Teleportation gates opened across the Dominion's defensive perimeter, disgorging ships directly into the heart of their formation. The enemy responded with devastating firepower, plasma lances and antimatter torpedoes tearing through space. Ships died on both sides, but the rebellion had something the Dominion had never faced. Unity born from shared suffering. Species that had been enemies for millennia fought side by side. Tactics developed over millions of years of separate struggles combined into something new, something adaptive, something the Dominion's commanders could not predict. Captain Osei led the Prometheus through the chaos, teleporting short distances to avoid enemy fire, striking at key targets before vanishing again. Her target was the station itself, the massive construct at the center of the battle where Velthos waited. Opening a gate directly into the station's docking bay, Webb reported. Brace for transition. The Prometheus folded through dimensional space. They emerged in a cavern of metal and light. Dominion soldiers rushed to intercept them, but the ship's weapons were faster. Essay led her strike team out through emergency hatches. Fighting their way toward the station's core dock, Ambassador Diana Wells watched the battle from the Geneva Command Center, her heart pounding with every update. General Blake stood beside her, coordinating reinforcements and evacuation efforts for damaged ships. The outer defenses are falling, he reported, but Velthos is moving the silencing weapon into position. If he fires it at our fleet, we lose everything. Wells closed her eyes, feeling the weight of responsibility crushing her. So many lives depended on what happened in the next few minutes. So many futures hung in the balance that Dr. Palmer touched her arm. He was pale, his body failing, but his eyes were bright with determination. Trust them, he said simply. Trust Captain Osei. Trust the Admiral. They will finish this. Deep inside the station, Osei and her team fought through corridor after corridor. The Dominion threw everything at them: soldiers, automated defenses, environmental hazards. But humanity had learned from every battle, every skirmish, every desperate moment of the past 6 months. They were not just survivors anymore. They were warriors. Finally, they reached the core. A massive chamber filled with machinery that pulsed with dimensional energy. At its center stood High Arbiter Velthos, his crystalline form blazing with ancient power. "You should not have come here, human," he said, his voice echoing through the chamber. "This station is the heart of the Dominion. It is protected by systems you cannot possibly understand." Usay raised her weapon. "We understand enough." Velthos laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "You understand nothing. Your species has existed for barely a moment. You are children playing with forces beyond your comprehension. Even if you destroy this station, the Dominion will endure. We are eternal. Nothing is eternal, Asay replied. The architects thought they were eternal too. You proved them wrong. Now we prove you wrong. She reached for the dimensional anchor at her belt, the device that Palmer had modified using knowledge from the Weaver. If she could activate it at the core, it would do more than destroy the station. It would reverse the effect of the ancient weapon, freeing the architects from their prison. Veltha saw her movement and struck. Energy lashed out, catching Asai across the chest and sending her flying against the wall. Her armor took most of the damage, but she felt ribs crack, felt blood fill her mouth. You cannot win, Veltha said, advancing toward her. I have ruled this galaxy for 9 million years. I have crushed civilizations that make your species look like insects. You are nothing. Through the pain, Asay smiled. I am not nothing. I am the message that proved the Dominion could be challenged. I am the symbol that inspired 1,000 worlds to rise. And I am the hand that ends your empire. She triggered the anchor. Light exploded through the chamber, through the station, through the space around them. It was not just energy. It was consciousness, patterns of thought and memory that had been trapped for 11 million years finally breaking free. The architects, the weavers, the ancient civilization that had dreamed of a galaxy united in freedom, poured back into reality. Veltha screamed as the dimensional energy he had wielded for so long turned against him. His crystalline form cracked, shattered, dissolved into light that was absorbed by the expanding wave of liberation. The station shuddered, its systems failing, its weapons going dark dot outside. The Dominion fleet watched in horror as their command structure collapsed. Ships that had fought with ruthless efficiency suddenly lost coordination, lost purpose, lost the will that had driven them for millions of years. Some surrendered. Others fled. A few fought to the end. But without the High Arbiter's guidance, they were just ships, not the unstoppable force that had terrorized the galaxy. Admiral Cole watched the battle end from the Geneva Command Center, tears streaming down his face. Around him, people embraced, wept, laughed with joy they could not contain. It was over. After everything they had endured, after every sacrifice and every moment of fear, it was finally over. Ambassador Wells found him later, standing alone on the observation deck, looking at the stars that now represented something other than threat. What happens now? She asked. Cole thought about the question for a long moment. Now we rebuild. Not an empire, not a dominion, but something new. A community of free species working together because they choose to, not because they are forced. Can it work? I do not know. But for the first time in 11 million years, there is a chance. 1 year later, Captain Lyra Osei stood in the chamber where humanity had first faced the Galactic Dominion. The space had been transformed, its towering thrones replaced by circles of equal seats, its atmosphere of intimidation replaced by something that felt almost like hope. Representatives from 1,000 species filled the chamber, species that had been enemies, victims, conquerors, and slaves. They came together not because anyone forced them, but because they had learned the same lesson humanity had taught by example. Freedom was worth fighting for. Osei addressed them, her voice carrying through the chamber that had once been a place of judgment. 1 year ago, humanity stood where you now sit, facing annihilation for daring to defend ourselves. We were called primitive. We were called dangerous. We were told that our place was to kneel before powers greater than ourselves. She paused, looking at the faces of beings from worlds she had never imagined. We refused. And because we refused, you are here. Not as subjects, but as partners. not as subordinates, but as equals. Admiral Cole watched from the gallery above, his daughter Emma beside him. She was 13 now, old enough to understand what her father had done, what humanity had become. "Are you proud?" she asked quietly. Cole looked down at the assembly, at the future being built from the wreckage of tyranny. "I am hopeful," he said. "That is better." The Weaver's presence touched Osei's mind one final time. "You have done well, child of Earth. The architects can finally rest. What will you do now?" She asked silently. "Watch, guide, hope, as we have always done. But this time, we do not do it alone." Osei smiled, feeling the weight of history and the lightness of possibility mixing in her chest. "We built railguns because we were afraid," she said aloud, addressing the assembly. "We developed teleportation because we were desperate. But we stand here today because we never stopped believing that the future could be better than the past." She raised her hand, and across the chamber, representatives of 1,000 species raised theirs in return. "The galaxy is free. May we never forget the cost, and may we always honor the promise." The applause that followed echoed through the chamber, through the station, through the network that now connected every willing world. Humanity had come to the stars as strangers. They had been called primitives, numbered, and dismissed. Now they were leaders. Now they were liberators. Now they were something the galaxy had never seen. They were free, and they had made sure no one would ever be enslaved again.